Does this sound like you? I play guitar and write music, but I want to be more productive and experiment with new sounds quickly and easily. Or maybe I play guitar so-so, but I still want to write killer tracks. And finally, I don't play guitar at all. I'm the bassist slash drummer slash vocalist, but I want to contribute to the writing process without having to learn the guitar, so I can give all my drive and passion to my instrument of choice. Let me tell you, I've been there. I've been the drummer who really didn't know how to write music or contribute to the band's overall vision other than just, smacking the drums around. And I wanted to progress. I wanted to do more. Well, back in the mid 2000s, I'm sure there were guitar VSTs, but they weren't really that great. So I actually had to pick up the guitar and learn how to play it. That's why I have those on the wall back there. But as much as I appreciate that, from a compositional perspective, or even from the perspective of really just wanting to give your all to one specific instrument, but still be able to write music, it really, really helps to have a program like we're going to talk about today. And that is the Odin 2 from Solemn Tones. And if you've read the reviews or watched other videos, you know that people love this guitar VST.
It is incredibly innovative and really, really good sounding. I'm kind of blown away by it.
For someone like me who's a producer who's not very good at playing guitar, this thing has been a lifesaver when it comes to demos and songwriting sessions.
I will say this though, as a disclaimer, I'm not getting paid for any of this. I bought this VST myself and I've used it and I absolutely love it. I love what he's doing with it. It's great. So this review slash tutorial slash whatever isn't biased in any way. This is purely what I think about this. But here's what we're going to do. We're going to see how this translates from the perspective of someone who's trying to write music for their band or for another artist. They're trying to demo their stuff. How does that translate? So we're going to start with the song in its most basic format, in the format of being MIDI, in a guitar tab editor. And then we're going to translate it to a full-fledged DAW, FL Studio. And then from there, we're going to see what VSTs we can apply to it to make it sound as good as possible so that the rest of the band can get hyped on it, and even somebody else might get hyped on it, like a label or something like that, or even how it can contribute to the overall recording process to save a ton of time and a ton of money on guitar parts that are kind of not so heard anyway, and so it doesn't really matter. So let's start with that. So we're going to jump right into our guitar tab editor here, Tux Guitar. I've used this for years now. It's free. It works really, really well for what it is. And this is a basic demo idea that I've got here. It's a very simple pop punk kind of song. And it starts with this little drum thing just to give you an idea of what it sounds like. It's very MIDI based. Let me just jump ahead in the song a little bit here so you can hear all the instruments. Okay. All right, so anybody that's been writing music before, probably on guitar, this sound is very familiar to you. So we're going to take this then, and we're going to shuffle it over to our DAW here. So let's go to File, Export to MIDI format. Now we can move over to FL Studio. I'm going to go ahead and just import that MIDI file here. Let's make that first track some drums. Now I like to use the MT Power Drum Kit. Fantastic little piece of software here. I think I paid 20 bucks for it, but it's really, really cool for what it is. And then that sounds like this. Wow, that already sounds immensely better. Now for the bass, just kind of work our way from the bottom up here. Oh, it's down here. I like to use this one here. The Ample Bass P Lite 2. So this is a free version of a bass VST. I've not really found any need to have more versatility than it already offers for the most part. So I'm happy with it. Okay, it's automatically an octave too low, I believe. Nice. Okay. Let's go back and import the guitars. Let's go ahead and load up Odin 2 here. I'm going to call this guitar, let's just say guitar 1. Just pan that over just to give a little bit of stereo separation. So we'll go ahead and go in here and we'll set it to guitar 1. Again, there's tutorials on how to use this. There's so many features and cool things. I'm just kind of showing you how to practically apply it to a project here. But guitar 1 gives us a really good starting point. And I do like to set the humanizing up just a little bit just to keep it from sounding too awful robotic. So it's important to keep in mind that this is a virtual guitar, so not a virtual amp or cabinet or anything like that. So what that means practically is that it's going to sound like a guitar. Okay. Which doesn't sound incredibly exciting by itself. So where the magic comes from is adding another VST, which is a virtual amplifier. I personally love the Amped Roots VST from ML Soundlab. This should look very familiar to some of you guitar nerds like me out there. This is a great free VST that sounds amazing out of the box. So it comes with different settings, straight up. So if you're into punk, thrash, new metal, metalcore, gent, whatever, and then Fluff, what's up, buddy? That's his preset there. So for demonstration purposes, I'm just going to leave it at high noon, which is across the board, straight up at 12 o'clock. And it does come with a pedal board with built-in noise gate, but for a guitar VST, I've noticed there's really no need for that because it's already very, very clean. Anyway, so then it starts to sound like this. Great. All right, so it's actually starting to sound more like an actual guitar. Now we can import the last guitar and go generally through the same procedure. Pan it over, souse, there we are. And just for a little bit of diversity, I'm gonna change it over to punk rock so that both guitars are not using the exact same settings. It just makes it sound a little bit more full, a little bit more rich, which every little detail like that when you're working with MIDI data is important because otherwise it can start to sound very robotic very quickly. And that's the enemy with something like this. So I turn the humanizing up to about this point because that seems to be the sweet spot. IMO. Let's do just a brief listen here and kind of see where we're at. So the first things first, I can tell that this is not in the right octave. So I'm going to go ahead and bump that up to a higher octave, and this one's not going to be correct either, so we're going to just move that one up. But it's only off by an octave. It's not a huge deal. There we go. Ooh. All right, so that already sounds immensely better. But what you notice here is with this guitar part over here, this sounds like garbage. Ugh, it's painful. So this is supposed to be palm mutes, basically. And the Tux guitar, the guitar tablature editor that I use, translates palm mutes to very staccato, what is that, 1/32? I don't know how to read music. Anyway, whatever that is. So in FL Studio, there's a cool little trick that you can do, which is Control L, and I'm assuming every DAW has this in some form or another, where you can select all the applicable notes, hit Control L, and it lengthens them to the beginning of the next note. So it takes care of that pretty quickly. The next thing you can do is utilize Odin 2's functionality of velocity, in the sense that it uses velocity in a way to express the notes differently. So in this case, around 25% velocity and lower becomes palm mutes. So what we can do is select, again, all the applicable notes and drag, if you like, or I use Alt and scroll wheel down to under 25%, and then it turns them into palm mutes. Let's have a listen. Ooh, that already sounds way, way better. That's where we're at. And then all together, it sounds like this. Great. Okay. We actually have a kind of a decent song now. You could probably leave it as it is and it would sound perfectly fine for demo purposes. But, you know, as things are, I don't like to leave things like that. I like to make it sound as good as possible with the tools that we currently have. So let's make this sound a little bit better here. Let's go ahead and zoom out. And this is a good example of randomizing things for humanizing effect. So we're going to do Alt+R, and that's a pretty high degree of variation. So let's turn it down just a little bit, and then we're going to accept that. And then notice if you can hear the difference. Okay, so that's imperfect, and this is perfect. And so I like it as being imperfect. So we're going to leave it at that. And then everything, it just kind of melds everything a little bit better. Great. All right. We're going to do the same thing with all the other instruments, actually. We're going to go ahead and take the bass, Alt+R, adjust everything as that is, and do the same with the guitar. So let's work on these guitars a little bit here before we do a whole lot with that. Let's make sure that anything that needs to be a palm mute is a palm mute. So I think I wrote that those are supposed to be palm mutes. So let's just do that then, I guess, here. Great. Okay, I like that. Probably going to end up doing the same thing with this one down here too. So let's just go ahead and get that out of the way. And again, under 25%. Okay, and then that comes to this. Let's work on this here. Again, we're going to stretch those out. Control L. It does sound, admittedly, a little bit robotic at that, if you have it soloed. But when you incorporate it into a full track, those little robotic notes start to kind of fall away, and it sounds a little bit more natural when you include the bass and the drums. So I'm going to leave it as it is. We can adjust some of the variation between velocities later in order to increase a more human element. We can also turn up the humanizing dial on Odin 2 if we need to as well. So Control A and then Alt+R, and we'll randomize everything a bit, keeping in mind that our palm mutes need to be below the 25% threshold, and they seem to be holding there. So we'll go ahead and hit accept, and just really quickly make sure that everything sounds halfway decent. Now, Odin 2 does have a built-in tremolo picking effect. So you can use a key switch for this here, but since the MIDI data is already drawn out for that, and I don't think it sounds terrible, and we're going to add a little bit of reverb later, maybe a slight bit of delay, it's going to fill in those gaps nicely. I don't see any reason to change it. You may decide to do something different, and that's totally cool. All right, so I'm happy with that guitar part. Let's do the same thing with this part here. So that brings everything together. So it sounds like this. Okay, it already sounds really, really good. From here, it's just kind of like seasoning the dish, so to speak, with little things here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add, probably not a delay, but just a slight reverb. I'm going to emulate a small studio. In other words, if this guitar was being recorded in a smaller room, what the reverb would kind of naturally sound like for that guitar. So it's not going to be noticeable, but you'll definitely miss it if it's gone. This is something that I love to do. And I think I stole this from Joey Sturgis somewhere along the way, but is to add a little bit of crunch, a little bit of distortion to the drums. It just makes everything come out a lot more. And one really cool way to do that is by using a saturation knob from Softube. It's completely free, as most things that I like to have are. You can see it here, that there are 3 different types. You can keep the saturation only on the highs, keep it neutral, that means everything is affected, or you can keep the lows, so the lows would be unaffected in that way. Since this is the drum track, I'm going to opt to keep the lows unsaturated. It's only going to affect the mids and the highs, and then we pretty much season to taste. So let's just play it and see where we end up. Great, so I'm gonna turn that down just a little bit, not a lot. And then I'm gonna go into, and this is just kind of knowing your VSTs. This one, I noticed that the snare usually needs a little bit more compression than what's on there, and then the kick drum is not compressed at all, which is fine, but I like it to be slightly compressed. It just gives it a little bit more of a click on the attack where the beater actually hits the head. And then you get a little bit, not so much more low end presence, but just a little bit more of a high end note that you can perceive, which is important, I think, because if you were to play this song back on, say, like an iPhone speaker or a Bluetooth speaker where there's not as much low end, you need something to be able to tell that the kick drum is actually there instead of just purely on the low end. So just something to keep in mind. And then that begins to sound a bit more like this. Great, okay. One other thing I like to do, and this is just good general practice, is to add a parametric equalizer to the master track and bring everything, and there's so many different ways to do this and opinions, but I've found generally if you kind of scoop off anything under 45 hertz, you don't even notice it when you're listening to it through a set of normal studio speakers or with headphones or anything like that. Where you notice that is if you're listening to it on a big sound system, and all the lows can really start to affect each other, and it gets very bass heavy, and it can overpower the rest of the mix, and it could make it difficult to really turn it up very far because the lows overpower everything. The rest of it was just little minor tweaks. You can really get as granular with this as you want to. I'm very pleased with this. I'm very happy with it. That's generally the process of taking something that is so robotic and so perfect and turning it into something that sounds like it was actually played by humans without it being played by humans. So I'll have a link to the final version of this song up on my channel so that you can listen to it in its entirety, really get a feel for what it sounds like. But for the purposes of demonstration, I think this shows it. All right, I hope this has helped you to see that there are a lot of possibilities with VSTs out there today, even relatively inexpensive ones and especially free ones. This can be a really powerful tool to help get your bandmates psyched over your new demo track, Because let's face it, sometimes it's hard to get everybody really amped up on something that just kind of sounds like computer noise. It's just not that convincing. This can really help people to understand and actually visualize, well, through their ears, auditorialize? I don't know what word I'm looking for, but it can help them to understand where you're coming from and what you're trying to do, which can be extremely important. And the other cool thing too is once your song is already in a MIDI format like this, it's easy to transpose things. So let's say that your singer is singing along to the demo and he likes it or she likes it, but it's just a little bit too high for them. You could actually just click and everything is down to where it's in a register or in a key that they feel way more comfortable with, and that can help them out tremendously. And something else too is just the simple fact that these guitar parts, although computer generated, don't sound bad. And especially if you record maybe some leads or some other parts with a real guitar, you could blend these into an existing track and save tons of time in the studio trying to track the guitar part and get it absolutely perfect. It's already perfect. So as long as you can blend it with what you already have, that can save you a lot of time as well. But it especially saves a lot of time in composing music. That's what this is primarily for, is in that first initial compositional stage to try out ideas and sketch things out in a realistic way so that you can determine if this song is gonna thump or if it's just gonna flop. And at the very least, you're going to get a lot better at music theory because, well, you kind of have to. When you're dealing with the piano roll and you're looking at how chords are structured and how that fits into the tempo and blah, 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 music nerd stuff, then you're going to get better at it. And there's really no better way to improve in your skills than to just try it and learn how to do it. Now, this is not to say that it's without its complications. There are certain elements that you're just not going to get past. You're going to have to put in a little bit of work to make this thing happen. As well, it's also $160. So that kind of excludes certain people, unfortunately. And there's no demo that you can download either to see if it's something that you would even be into. You have to try it by buying it. But thankfully, there are so many different reviews, including this one, that you can sort of start to visualize how this VST could work in your workflow and really bring out the best in your demos. Anyway, that's all the hype that I have for this beautiful little VST. Check it out, or don't. Don't let me tell you how to live your life. Do what you want to do. But I promise, if you do, you're going to like it. It's great stuff. Anyway, thanks for watching. Please hit that like and subscribe button. Click the little bell so that you know when new stuff is uploaded. I'm doing a lot more of this now. So if you have a recommendation or a question, hit me up. I'll definitely try to answer it as quickly as I can. With that, I'm out. Thank you.